Well, the sanctions on Russia have raised the question about the economic implications of isolating a major country from the global financial system. And some have pondered if a Russian turn towards, let's say, the Chinese renminbi would destabilize the U.S. dollar. Well, luckily, we've got a dollar expert here to help us explore that question. Daniel McDowell is an associate professor of political science at Syracuse University and joins us live on the program. Professor McDowell, thanks for hopping on. I guess, could you just answer that question? Is the U.S. dollar dominance in threat because of what's going on over in Russia?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is the U.S. dollar dominance in threat? No. I think that this will have an impact, though, on dollar use. So it will be probably marginal and will be kind of isolated in certain pockets. And I think we can say that because if we look back over the last decade, really since around 2010, the United States has been kind of reaching for financial sanctions as a tool of foreign policy with greater and increasing frequency. And we've already seen countries respond and adapt by trying to reduce their exposure to the dollar. Probably the best example would actually be Russia prior to what's happened over the last couple of weeks here after sanctions in 2014, and then again several rounds leading up to a major round in 2018. Russia made some significant moves in its reserve decisions and in its its trade settlement moves with China in particular to kind of cut down on its use of the dollar. And I think we'll see more of that, certainly with Russia, because frankly, it doesn't have much other choice. But we may also see other countries, including a country like China, trying to move to kind of insulate itself from a potential future round of Western sanctions like Russia's facing now.
Yeah, I mean, and just to be clear, it's not like people are saying, well, the Russian ruble is going to become the new world's reserve currency. But I guess there's just a question about whether or not, for example, trading partners would choose to invoice their currency in something else as Russia turns to China. Maybe others do so as well. We had seen some kind of discussion that maybe Saudi Arabia or other types of countries would start to invoice in Chinese renminbi. Yep. How important is trade to this story here? Because Russia has a lot of partners through its commodities businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think trade's actually where we probably will see more of this action, especially if we think about RMB. I don't think we're going to see China make the kind of financial liberalization moves it's going to need to make the RMB kind of a legitimate challenger to the dollar's reserve currency sort of investment role. Right, China, if anything, I think these sanctions may make China more skittish about opening up its financial system because it can sort of see how that could make it vulnerable, right, to that kind of pressure. But when it comes to like trade settlement, I think what we will see is sort of more of these moves, especially with countries like Russia that are sanctioned, or countries that might fear that they could be sanctioned in the future, right? Autocratic regimes that say, hey, we've seen the United States sort of cut off economies for human rights violations in the past. We've seen them do it for sort of eroding democratic institutions. Hey, if this is something that we might be doing in our country at some point in the future, maybe we want to try to work with China on conducting more of our trade, at least with China, in their own currency, using China's own cross-border payment system. And China might see some sort of opportunity there. We know that elites in China have been watching this for the last several years, at least since 2018, when the United States pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, right? That angered Europe, that angered a lot of other countries around the world, kind of forcing these partners with Iran to kind of pull out of that economy. And recognizing that the United States had this immense power, China says, hey, that's a kind of a natural constituency for us. If we want to expand our own payment system, these kind of aggrieved countries might look to us and say, hey, that's an opportunity we would like to be a part of in the event that we face those kinds of pressures in the future. At least we can have sort of our economic ties with China less likely to be disrupted.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that brings up the point, though, that the story that we're talking about here is really not about the USD or even about the Russian ruble. It really is about the Chinese renminbi. But, one thing I know that you pointed out is that it's not as binary as, look, China wants its renminbi to become the world's reserve currency, even if they're far away from that. I mean, some, you would argue, might prefer to remain kind of a back, sitting in the back kind of currency in terms of the global basket of big nations. I mean, how do you think that kind of factors into the way that China's viewing the developments that have been going on?
Completely. I think we need to recognize that, with like any country, right, there are sort of political factions, and within China there are some that for the last really about 14 years or so have been advocating strongly for financial opening and for promoting the internationalization of the RMB. And then there have been those who have been pushing back the other way and that are concerned that, right, opening China's financial system sort of limits the stability, especially the exchange rate, right? Right, could make the economy more prone to things like financial crises, right, sudden stops. And so you have these two sides, the side that sort of favors stability, and then the side that sort of has more ambitious goals for China's sort of financial future. I think, if anything, these sanctions maybe, give the side that's sort of advocating for greater internationalization of the RMB, it gives them a little more ammunition, right? Because they're able to say that this is in our sort of strategic interest to have a more international currency, because right, the United States will be less capable of using the dollar as a weapon against us if our own currency has a major role in the world economy. But I don't think, again, that's going to lead to a wholesale change in China's sort of approach. It's, China's obviously sort of historically shown that it's very cautious when making these kinds of moves. It doesn't make sort of dramatic changes overnight, and I don't think we'll see that here.
All right, so the big story, I guess, is that people can go to sleep at night not worrying about the U.S. dollar losing its status. I mean, last comment I just want to point out here is that I should note that you were actually my capstone senior year advisor on a paper that I wrote about the renminbi in use as an invoice currency in the Southeast Asian nations. It's crazy that we're able to chat here today about this, one expert to someone that was a student. So do you remember that paper? It was a while ago.
Oh, I remember it really well. In fact, it was fun because, there aren't that many students that come to me wanting to work on a paper about RMB internationalization, especially. I don't even know how many years ago it was, Brian. So you were way ahead of the curve. But, I was looking over some notes, and I think I think you owe me a final round of revision. So maybe Wednesday, if you want to drop by my office hours, we can talk about that. Okay.
I already see your red Sharpie coming out. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like I got to make a trip back up to Syracuse. But hey, go Orange. And again, Daniel McDowell, associate professor at Syracuse University. Thanks so much for hopping on. We'll have you back.
All right. Go Orange. Thanks, Brian.
Very, very soon.
Yep.
Go Orange. Appreciate it.